Yo, what is up guys? Today's video I wanted to bring you something pretty cool. This is a video heavily inspired by Perry. About a month ago, he made a video very similar. I'll have it pop up on screen if you are interested in watching it. But essentially what he did is he went through and ranked every single anime Vanguards update, and that's what I plan to do today as well. Now let me set some ground rules for our rankings here. For these rankings, I'm going to score them out of 10 on these categories, and then overall what we'll do is at the end, once we're done with that update, we'll categorize in full what their total score is. Now let me say that this is all my opinion, this is all subjective, so if you disagree with anything in this, please let me know down in the comments. If you think an update I think sucked was really good, please let me know. I am interested to hear what you guys have to say. Now, my criterias I have that I'm going to be scoring every update on is units, the update's mechanics, the update's overall creativity, so what it brought to the game and how it changed the game, the overall hype of the update, so how excited people were for that update to be released, and finally, the final category is going to be overall fun. So just at the end of the day, with everything set aside, the units, blah blah blah, mechanics, everything, how fun was the update? That is going to be the final category, and then once we're done with that, we're going to tally everything together and you're going to get your final score. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please hit that subscribe button. We're getting very close to 2,000 subscribers, and I'd love to hit that before astd releases. So with that being said, let's jump into today's video. So starting off really strong, we have update 0, so basically the release of anime Vanguards. I'm sure a lot of you guys have played this. Anime Vanguards, at least when it first came out, the first update and the first release was just, the game blew up, man. People loved it, including myself. So just remember the 5 categories we have. We're going to be ranking them out of 10 stars, and then at the end we're going to combine it for an overall score. So let's start off with units. Units is actually going to be a pretty hard one to score just because this is the game's release, so it's not like they could get better and better, but I will give this to Anime Vanguards. They were, I believe, the first game to do passives. Maybe Anime Defenders may have had it before them, but I remember passives were a thing long before Anime Defenders even came out, and we were seeing sneaks for it. So I will give a big plus to them for passives because that is a super good, innovative thing that has changed anime tower defense games. Almost every anime tower defense now has passives. Some may have already had them before, but now it literally tells you what they do, and now these games build their characters around passives. The units that were in the release of the game was Chai-In, Naruto, Obito, Vegeta, Sasuke, Sun Jin-Woo, Igris, Alucard, and Hakarin. Those were all the mythics and secrets and exclusives that were all from that update. I'm gonna be honest, there was no super crazy game mechanic characters. I think for update 0, if we're scoring every single thing fairly, I think I'm gonna give update 0 on the unit side. If I had to give the release an overall score, I'm feeling like for the units at least, I would give them probably a 4. There really wasn't anyone doing anything super unique. I'm giving this a little bit of a lighter, less harsh score just because it's the game's release. I didn't assume them to do something like super insane because it's the game, it's releasing. So, but next category we have is mechanics. We already talked about it a little bit, but it didn't really introduce any super interesting mechanics. Obviously, passives were probably the biggest one that this came out with. Sub traits was also going to be something pretty big, but they just never came out to the game, and I doubt they ever will. So for mechanics, I think I'm going to give this 3 as well. I think it was just kind of like a mediocre, really wasn't anything special that was brought out with this, so I'm going to give this a 3. Next would be creativity. I'm just going to wrap that in with mechanics and units. This was the release of the game, so they didn't really do anything super creative. The most creative thing, like I said, was passives and maybe paragons, but this was like for the game started cooking, so I'm going to give creativity a 3. For our next category though, we have hype. For me, I would say hype is like, this is, well, me even talking about it, I would immediately, my gut reaction is to give hype a 9 or 10. Anime Vanguards' release was so stretched out and hyped up. Basically, the longer it got stretched out, the more excited people got for the game, which you can decide if that's good or not, but I think for hype, I'm going to give this a 9. Anime Vanguards' release it's almost as hype as you can get. People were going absolutely insane for this release, so easily I'm giving this a 9. You could maybe budget up to a 10 if you really wanted, but I would give it a 10 if all these other things like the units, creativity, mechanics were really high. If all those were at least 7 minimum or higher, then I would bump this up to a 10 easily. But since everything else in the game was a little underwhelming, I think that brings the hype down at least 1 notch. A lot of people just gave Update 0 the pass because they were expecting the game to get a lot better, which it obviously does, but we just didn't know the road to getting there. But yeah, that's the release, and let's jump into the next update. Alright, so here we are with Demon Slayer Update 0.5. This update is going to be very small. We're going to fly through this one and these next couple because they're very small updates. But let's start off with the units. So this update came out with Rengoku, I think is how I say his name, and then Tengen. And then it had the second farm unit, Takarada, like the money farm, and then Sakura, which was our first stun. So the units themselves weren't really that crazy. Rengoku was just a good burn unit, basically. Akaza was one of the first versions of like weird quirky support, and Tengen was just a flat, big damage dealer. So we're just gonna jump right in. I'm gonna give the units of this update, I think, a 5, because there were literally only 3, but all 3 of them were very broken. They were pretty good, and they were all worth grinding, so that's my reason for that. Next, we jump into the mechanics. The mechanics was garbage for this update. Horrible. This is the update they added the new raid, and in the new raid, there was an enemy that would literally permanently stun your units, so you had to sell them and replace them. And on the final wave, you couldn't sell some of your units. It was a big mess. And the only unit in the entire game that could cleanse your units was the epic Sakura unit, which you had to basically micromanage for this raid. It was annoying. It was a bad idea. Tengen was one of the few people immune to this effect. Same for Gojo. But Gojo wasn't out yet. So for the mechanics wise, and like I said, this didn't introduce anything new, and I'm going to be a lot more harsh now because this isn't the release. I'm giving this a 2. The only thing saving it from a 1 is entirely Akaza because he was actually kind of unique. Next, we have creativity. I'm going to give creativity a 3. There was nothing really super special with this one. It was just literally your generic, do these stages of the raid, get to the final stage of the raid, and kill the boss. There was really nothing special about this one. I can't remember what I said. I think I said a 3 or 2, so that's just where I'm going to land it. And then overall hype. I'm actually going to give overall hype a 6 because I remember people just were super hyped for the game's first update because it was coming out pretty soon. It came out pretty fast. It came out about 2 weeks after the game's release. And I think the reason I'm going to be giving a 6 is because once people realized it was Demon Slayer, I think a lot of people got really disappointed and just stopped caring. So there you go. There's the Demon Slayer 0.5 update. It wasn't really anything crazy, but it wasn't horrible. With that though, let's jump into the next update. Alright, so here we are at update 1. This is the first giant big update that was added to the game. It added 13 new units. So let's just run down the list really quickly. We're going to only talk about the evolved units. We don't care about the unevolved units. We have Julius, which was a battle pass unit. It was a very good freeze unit that had very high DPS. Toji, Jogo, Chozo, and Todo. I don't know why they have so many O's in these JJK names, but let's start off with the first category with units. So the units this update were actually, they were all good choices with popular characters and stuff like that. I wish there were a little more characters, but I think they overall did a pretty good job. And the mechanics of these characters are what made them special. So I will, I think, give the characters from this update an overall, I think, 7. I think each character, except maybe Jago and Choso, did something actually pretty different from each other and pretty unique, which is pretty good to see. We also had the first leaderboard / tournament rewards. We had Broly, Mekamaru, and Mahito. Broly was decent, but the other two sucked, but they were cool picks for characters. Next, let's jump into the mechanics for this update. We talked about with the characters. Each character had their own thing that made them special, so I think they did really good in that aspect. We got a new story, new legend stages, and probably the biggest mechanic that we got was elements. We got 10 elements in total, which is crazy. We got tournaments, we got a gold shop, we got stat transferring for free, unit specific achievements, and we got our first new battle pass. It also increased the level cap to 60, which is what I'm just reading now. This update did a lot. I think mechanics wise, this update is easily at an 8. This really did push the game forward and improve the game a lot with the new things that it did add. With creativity, I'm also just gonna bounce straight into creativity because I don't want to use too much time. I'll give creativity like a 5. Some of the things they added, like tournaments, gold merchants, stat transfers, those have been done before, but they had their own little spin on it, which I do like. The elements, each element had their own mechanic, which was really cool. That was pretty creative. And some of the units were really creative. Todo was very cool, very creative with the Black Flash ability. Toji was very creative because he could switch weapons. So yeah, I think a 5 is a good middle point for this update. The new things that they did happen to make were pretty good. Lastly, that brings us to hype. I'm going to say the hype for this update was about an 8 because this update took a month long for it to come out. It came out on October 21st. The last update came out in September 21st, so it took a very long time for this update to come out. So there was a lot of build up and hype to this, especially with it being JJK. People love Gojo, people love Sukuna, and yeah, this update was definitely huge. But with that, wraps up update 1.0. So here we are at update 1.1. This came out on November 9th, 2024. This is Sukuna Boss Rush. This had 2 new characters. This had Zeon, the burn guy from the battle pass. He was like tier 50. And then it came out with Sukuna and his Boss Rush. That was basically it. I'm gonna be for real. This update, like characters wise, the units were very boring. I would give the units like a 2. I would give the mechanics, because this was the introduction of Boss Rush. I'm pretty sure. Maybe Igris's came out before this, but I'd give the mechanics like a 3 because Sukuna, his Boss Rush wasn't really anything super innovative. It was literally just a boss spawned every couple waves. When it comes to creativity, same thing. I'm just gonna give creativity like a 3 because no, I'm actually going 1 tick down lower. I'm gonna give it a 2. I mean, just it's a boss rush. That's it. This is all this update was. Nothing special. I'm gonna give the hype probably like a 4 because people were hyped to get Sukuna finally, and then when they actually got their hands on the update, they realized, wow, this is not good. Not a good update. With that though, we jump over to update 1.5. Same thing. This update kinda sucked. I'm just gonna be for real. I don't think it was good at all. This was the Dandadan update, and the 5 units were Diavolo, Grandma Psycho, Puini, Okarun, and Momo. Momo was garbage. Okarun was very disappointing because he was the main character of the show. Puini, awful unit. He was like okay with Monarch when the update came out. Grandma Psycho, just bad. She was not worth grinding. She was the secret unit. And then Diavolo. Diavolo is literally the only W holding this update together. And also he was the first Vanguard. So literally just through pure will of Diavolo carrying, I'm going to give this a 4. That brings us to the mechanics. This event actually was pretty good. The event itself was not bad. It was literally just the event and basically nothing else. This came with the occult dungeon where you had to go pick up the talisman mechanics off the ground. It had the starting traits where you could give yourself all monarchs, or you could make it so you have 20 placements for the units. It's crazy. This did actually come out with a lot of stuff. It came out with match restarting, which is amazing. That is something that's amazing. Unit familiars, which at the time sucked, but became a very good thing. And it came out with skins. So mechanics wise, I'm going to give this 7. I think mechanics wise, this was good. This was a good, decent update. When it comes to overall creativity, I'm going to knock this down a peg probably to like 5 because Diavolo's kit is very creative. And a bunch of the modifiers, skins, familiars are creative, but every other unit is not creative. They suck. They're garbage. Horrible. And then the hype for this update, I would say the hype was probably for me sitting around a 6 or 7. I'd say 7 because this was around Dandadan's release and it was very hot. It was like the hot new anime. People loved it. And yeah, that's update 1.5. Wasn't really much. Here we are at update 1.75. This came out December 8th, 2024. This added 4 new units. It added Giro, Johnny, Valentine, and Diego. We're just gonna hop straight into units. Units wise, they were unique, but they weren't good, I think was the problem. I think these 4 units all did something that was unique, like it made them special, but they just weren't really good. Diego was probably the only one here that was actually pretty good and runnable. Johnny was decent too. So for the units wise, I'm gonna give this, I think, a 5, because Diego and Johnny do really hold this together in making this a pretty cool update. Next we have mechanics. I'm just gonna drop this here. I'm giving the mechanics of this update, I think, a 2. This was an exact copy paste basically of the Dandadan thing where you have to pick up stuff off the ground, but they put it in a raid format where you have to do 5 acts, blah blah blah. It's garbage. It's not very good. The only good thing about this mechanics wise is they added console support in this update, which opened up a whole new market of players. When it comes to creativity, 1.75 was, I'm gonna just drop the bomb and do another 2 because what did it do that was creative outside of the units? It didn't add any creative mechanics. It was basically just a copy and paste. I'm sure they added obviously some improvements here and there and quality of life, but it's just not enough to save this update in my opinion. And when it comes to hype, personally for me, I have read Steel Ball Run, so I do love it. But for a lot of other people, I remember seeing people pissed and not happy about this update because, I mean, you picked a part of JoJo that specifically has not been animated yet, so you're obviously going to have a lot of people pissed that their favorite part wasn't picked, and it's a part that no one's even seen, really, because it's not animated. So it's just not a great choice. Like, I think it's a good choice for a small update, of course, but just not a great choice for your first JoJo update. I'm going to give hype-wise a 3, and now let's jump over to update 2.0. Alright, so here we are at update 2.0. This came out December 24th, 2024. This was the turning point of anime Vanguards in my opinion. It wasn't the exact turning point, but it was when it started to blossom. So here we go. We have 7 new units. We have Gilgamesh, Lancer, Ishtar, Archer, Saber, Medusa, and... I have no idea how to say her name. But we have a new story, new legend stage, and 7 new units. Let's just start with the units before we jump into anything. But the units all themselves were pretty unique. I think they did a really good job because they made almost every single character feel useful in a way or feel meta in a way. Gilgamesh, absolutely broken unit with that ability and all the hoops you gotta jump through to get him. Lancer is amazing because of the status effect he puts on people. Ishtar was cool because she was like a flying character and she had a cool passive. Archer did a lot of damage. Saber is still one of the best units to have Monarch on, which is crazy. Medao, it was kind of mid, and then Medusa was a good bleed unit. So they basically went 6 out of 7 with these units. They cooked. I think unit-wise, I'm going to give this update an 8. Alright, let's jump into mechanics. So here's the new things we got with mechanics. We got world lines, which was great. Added a new way to get a bunch of units. It has a lot of rewards, blah blah blah. You guys know the deal. It had the weather system. It's got a lot of new stuff. Dismantling for essence stones came in. Unit normalizing came in. Level milestones went up. More achievements. Weekend boost came out. Namek got reworked, and the legacy event shop came out. So there was actually, mechanic-wise, a lot of new things that came out. When it comes to enemy mechanics and stuff like that, there really wasn't that much for this update, so if I had to go mechanics-wise, I'm going to give this update, I think, a 6 off of mechanics, because this is heavily carried by, I think, the weekend boost and world lines. Now, when it comes to creativity, I'm going to give this update a 7. I'm going to give this update a 7 because each of the characters all did something unique, and I think that's really creative. I think World Lines, yes, it was kind of a copy of Infinity Castle, but they went and made it their own thing with the weather system, so I do really like that. And they just added a bunch of quality of life that people wanted. I think creativity-wise, like I said, I think 7's a good score for it. And then lastly, hype. I am going to put hype at, I think I'm going to say 3, because Fate is obviously a super popular anime, but people weren't very excited for this, especially with this coming out on Christmas Day, the same day as Anime Adventures re-release. You that. It just does not work. Plus this update came out with a lot of bugs. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry. Obviously the hype factor holds this thing down, but let's jump into update 3.0. Alright, we made it to update 3.0. This is the true turning point for Anime Vanguards in my opinion. This is when the game started to go up and actually start being really fun again. This came out January 19th, 2025, and there were 12 new units. Those units included, we had Vanguard Gogeta 4, we had Amelia, Subaru, I think I just said his name wrong, but Ragna, Fubiki, I don't even know where he's from. I think he's from Fire Force. Kareem is how he says it in game. Rem and Ram, and then the 2 Battle Pass Naruto units. We had some leaderboards too. We had Bardock and Ginyu as leaderboards, and those were the units. So this update, unit-wise, was pretty interesting just because, just like last update, this is when they started making basically every unit kind of own thing. If I had to rate these guys out of 10, I think the character selection is pretty bad. Like, they pick very cool characters, but strength-wise and how good they actually were in game, I would give the units from this update, I think, a nice little 7. Because there were some characters that were kind of bad, like Amelia was super great, the Battle Pass units were kind of meh, and Kareem was pretty bad. But everyone else was pretty good, so kudos to them. Next we have the mechanics for this update. The biggest mechanic that this update introduced was portals being brought into the game. The first holiday event, which was the winter update, and then we had portals, we had sandbox mode, and then we had boss events rerun weekly. We also had the new lobby. I think overall, when it comes to mechanics, I'm going to give this update a nice little 5. I think it's right in the middle. It did a lot of things good, but it didn't add a whole lot, but it did pretty good for what it added. Next, I have creativity. I'm going to give this update a 7 for creativity because I think they did really well with making each character kind of own little unique thing, and I think sandbox is something that basically none of these games have that's really unique. The way their portals work are pretty creative, and the new lobby was also really nice. Now, finally, when it comes to hype for this update, for me personally, this update was probably around a 6. I was still kind of in the honeymoon phase of Anime Adventures, so it hasn't fully hit me yet that I was actually enjoying Anime Vanguards, but I think they chose some characters that made people super hyped, like Gogeta, Ragna, Rem and Ram. Those are characters that people are like, wow, I want to come back and play the game for. The new lobby, they just did a good job making the game feel new, so I would give the hype a 6. That brings us to update 3.5, which came out on February 2nd of 2025. This is the Saber Boss Rush update. We got Secret Saber, we got Secret Sakura, and we got Secret Esdeath, and then we got a mythical Lily that was on banner. Those are our 4 units that we're rocking with. When it comes to units, this is a much smaller update, so it's way easier for me to rate, but I think on a unit scale, I'm going to give this update a 6, because Saber and Sakura were definitely the main takeaways from this update. They were very unique and special. Esdeath was just your, I don't want to say generic freeze unit, but she was like a support freeze unit with a time stop, not anything super new. And then Lily's whole thing is that she's a summoner that has 1 summon. So I think a 6 is a good score because Lily and Esdeath weren't super crazy, but Saber and Sakura definitely carried. You could argue this up to like a 7 or 8 if you really wanted to, but I think 6 is a good cemented number. Okay, brings us to mechanics. So this update came out with a new boss event, and the big new mechanic of this boss event was it was played completely different because it had a mechanic called Servants. Servants basically just gave you an ability where you could place or do something special every 3 times per round, I believe so, which was pretty cool. That was pretty unique. Boss events as a whole all got overhauled. They all got elite difficulties and normal difficulties. You can now play boss events with other people. There's now elite tournaments, and all the boss event currencies now restock when they cycle. This came out with public matchmaking. This came out with world lines. This came out with the Sand Village map remake, and it also came out with the starting player quest line. So basically, if you're a newer player, you get Mythic Vegeta for free. As a whole, I'm gonna give this update, I think, a 9 when it comes to mechanics, because they really just took a step back and were like, we need to fix these issues with the game, and they did it. I think a 9 is a good choice for mechanics. See, now when it comes to creativity, I think I'm also going to give this an 8. They were very creative with Saber and Sakura, which is great to see. They added a bunch of new versions of things to be doing in the game. They added public matchmaking. They announced that world lines will now reset every 0.5 update. They went and remade Sand Village because it wasn't that great looking at the map. And then add a starting player questline. I think 8 is a great number because it's just, this was a very solid update. Next, we have height. I will say the general consensus for this update, the height probably was around a 5 to 6. A lot of people still weren't a big fan of Fate, but it was really cool if they were going back so quickly to Fate and then doing a really cool boss rush with cutscenes and new mechanics and things like that. All the characters were really fun and broken, and they really shaped the game into what it's now becoming in the future. So I think that is a really good number for the hype. And let's jump into update 4.0. Alright, now this is a fat update. We have the Bleach 1000 Year Blood War arc. This is update 4.0. It came out on February 25th, so it actually came out, I think, about 3 to 2 weeks after the Saber update. We have 12 new units with this update. We have David, we have Lucy, we have Aizen, Yuhababa, we have Yamamoto, Giselle, Ichigo, Kenpachi, Kizuke, Orihime, and Oryu. A lot of characters to be getting. Now, when it comes to units, they're balancing how good they were. Man, this update, I think, maybe could constitute 9 or 10. They really blew it out of the park with these characters. Each and every one of them did something really cool and really unique, and you had to go and do a bunch of special stuff to get almost every character that wasn't a banner character, which I really liked. Next, we have mechanics. The massive new mechanic of this update was rifts. Rifts were something that spawn every hour to 2 hours, or when you complete global tasks, and you can do them with 6 people. This is how you get Yubaba. It's very good, cool game mode. I like it. We also had a new portal for Valentine's, which is how you got Giselle. We had the Rift shop, and we had the Valentine's portal shop. The cosmetic system got revamped, which was a huge W, where you could put on what you wanted to put on. And that's about it. For mechanics, this one was definitely smaller, but it wasn't bad. I think I'm going to give mechanics of this update a 7. Very solid, very good. Next, when it comes to creativity for this update, taking a step back and looking at all the characters, most of the characters did something new or really creative that we haven't seen with other tower defense games, which I do really like. Rifts were something that were already kind of in Anime Royale, but that was really about it. Love portals were pretty boring, and I think just kind of like a recycled thing, so I don't think they were that creative. And the shops for Rifts and the love shop were just kind of boring as well. The cosmetic system was awesome, great addition. I think when it comes to creativity for this update, I'm going to give it a solid 6. I think the characters were great, and I think the cosmetic system is great, but I think the love portals kind of hold it back a little bit, and I think rifts are cool, but they're not like a super crazy creative thing. And then finally, when it comes to hype, I'm just going to give the hype for this update a 9. I was super hyped for this update. I love Bleach. People in the Discord were going crazy for this update. People love Bleach. This is obviously Bleach's biggest arc, and it is one of the biggest updates we ever got. We have 12 characters. There's a lot of juice here, and this update definitely deserves a lot of the praise it does get. This brings us officially to update 4.5, which was the solo leveling part 2 update. The release of the game was basically a part 1. This came out on March 16th, 2025, and featured 3 new characters, one of which being our first free-to-play Vanguard unit, Sun Jiwoo Igris, and possibly the best unit in the game still, which is crazy. Alongside him, we had the guild leader from solo leveling, and then we also had Free Ren as the World Lines unit. I think immediately off of just looking at these 3, I'm going to give it an 8 because they did basically a free-to-play Vanguard. Yes, he's a little annoying to get, obviously, but you can get the most broken character in the game for free, which is crazy. The guild leader, he's kind of mid. I'm not gonna be honest. He's not super crazy. He's just like a generic burn unit, but he's still really good. He was very good at times. And then Free Run is very awesome. Super unique character, does very special things. So yeah, I think an 8 is very fitting for the characters of this update. Next, we have mechanics for this update. The biggest new mechanic for this update was dungeons. Dungeons are very, very cool. They're basically like raids on steroids. They're very, very difficult, but pretty fun because they have a different modifiers that you can pick that make the gameplay a little different. This is how you got the secret guild leader guy I was talking about, and this is how you evolve your monarch Sun Jin Woo. Next, we have the mailbox, which is pretty good because you just get free stuff every time a new update comes out, and you can check the balance and change logs in game. We have cosmetic loadouts, so you can save your cosmetic combinations, which is super great. We have 6 new achievements, which it's been a while since we've gotten one, so it's very great to get that. We have boss bounties, which is a super free, easy way to grind rerolls every day. I think I'm going to give the mechanics of this update a 4. It's nothing really super crazy. Dungeons are, I don't want to say a reskin of raids, but they're very, very similar in many aspects. Mailbox is something that's like a cool addition, but it's not super crazy. The new achievements are nice, and the cosmetic loadouts are nice. Those are mainly the 2 things that are holding this up together. Next, we have the creativity factor. I think when it comes to creativity for this update, I'm also going to give it a 4. I think Sun Jin Woo and Igris and Free Run, the combination of them just absolutely carry this update. They're very, very unique and cool and do really cool stuff. Like Free Run's really cool. If you haven't checked her out, go check her out in Sandbox. And then finally, we have the hype factor. I do think this update was very hype. I think the only problem is it took a very long time to come out, but on first glance, when I first saw it for the first time, I got very excited because Sun Jin Woo and Igris is really cool. It's first free-to-play Vanguard. We knew that coming into the update before it even started. And Free Run, super cool, iconic character. I think as a hype factor, I'm going to give this update a 6 when it comes to hype. And yeah, that basically wraps up update 4.5. So we're at update 5.0. This update came out on April 13th of 2025, so this is a month-long wait for this one. This is the Dragon Ball Z update. The characters that we got were Ultimate Gohan, Hercule and Boo, Goku/Vegito, Boo, Virgil, and Dante. And then we got Killer Bee and Rock Lee as leaderboard and tournament units. And then we also got a pea shooter from Plants vs. Zombies as a mailbox reward. I think considering everything this update did balance-wise, and just would have to give the characters this update, honestly, a 8. I think the characters this update are an easy 8 because Dante was broken, Virgil was broken. These are both battle pass units that you can get easily. Boo is broken. This is a character you can get easily. Goku's broken. This is a character you can get easily. Gohan's broken. This is a character you can get easily. You see the pattern? These were just all really easy, simple characters for people to get. Super fun, enjoyable update. I think when it comes to mechanics now, let's go see what we have. With this update, Odyssey came out. We had the new story. We had the introduction of Energy Drain. We had Legend Stages, Battle Pass, Familiar Corruption, Challenge Overhaul, Trait Filtering, Familiar Filtering. We had Auto Fusing, and you can now display your units on your profile. So mechanics-wise, we just scrolled through everything there, right? Mechanics-wise, I would probably give this update a 6. And the reason I'm going to give it a 6 is because Odyssey, when it first came out, wasn't really that great. There wasn't really much of a reason to play it, and it was very not fun. It just took a long time, blah, blah, blah. The new story, Energy Drain, is easily, I think, the worst enemy buff they've ever created. It is horrible. I really think the Battle Pass and the complete Challenge Overhaul carry this up to a 6, because the Challenge Overhaul with the introduction of weeklies, and you can now do dailies, and they all get affected by 2x weekend rewards. Amazing. Like, they should have thought of this on release, because it's just such of a good feature. Next, when it comes to creativity, all the units did something really unique. Gohan is probably the only person that was kind of basic out of this whole update. Everyone else did something very cool. Ignoring how bad Odyssey is a really creative game mode. I think they really cooked with that. I think challenge overhaul, super creative, love it. I love that it gets affected by 2 times weekend. And yeah, when it comes to the creativity of this update, I think I'm also going to give it a 6. It didn't really add a lot, but the things that it did add were really cool and I really enjoyed it. That brings us to the final category, hype. I think the hype of this update was easily like a 9, debatably a 10. I think if it had a little more, you could bump it up to a 10, but Dante and Virgil being there, Vegito being there, Buhan being there, Ultimate Gohan being there, and the pea shooter, man, people were going crazy for this, including myself. So hype, easily a 9. This was a super cool update. They didn't do everything correct, but it was fun, and that's all that really matters. Alright, this brings us to update 5.5, which came out on May 5th. This update only came out with 3 new characters in a new raid. We had Sid, we had Katakuri, and we had Delta. So let's talk about the characters of this update. Delta was a reskin of Uryu, so I really was not a fan of that, and she was also just kind of worse in my opinion. Katakuri, really cool. I really love the way they did him. And then we have the main big guy of this update, Sid. Sid was a really cool unit. He is really cool. I think the only problem is it took them a little bit to figure out how good he should truly be with buffs and nerfs. But Sid, in theory, is a really cool unit. I'm going to give this update a 6 when it comes to units. I think Delta really holds him down, and I think Sid being kind of mid on release also holds him down. Let's jump over to the mechanics of this update. So starting off, this update came out with a new raid, which when I first started that, I'm like, oh great, they're just going to reskin the same thing. But no, they did something pretty special with it. You have to do all those mechanics where if you're playing with other people, you get tied up, and you have to activate these statues in the order of Sid tells you. You have to beat him in time. Cool stuff. Next, we have the Odyssey rework. Odyssey got reworked to actually be a good game mode now and work and function and have good rewards. Super great, love that. Tournaments got reworked now, where there's now buffed and excluded characters. Love that. That is so much better. Along with Odyssey, we got 2 new familiar reroll stuff. We got the crafting UI got reworked, and we got material synthesis, which you can turn your other materials into the materials you need. Love it. Quick craft, love it. You can craft all your items instantly just by the click of a button. Recommended units. If you're struggling with a stage, it tells you what people use. You can now check the enemy index in game, and that is about it. Mechanics wise, I think I'm going to give this update an 8 because the new raid was fun. I think it wears off a little bit. I don't think it's super fun the entire time, but they also fixed Odyssey into being an actually fun and playable game mode. Tournaments now are very fun and they're always different. It doesn't feel like anime adventures where it cycles the same thing over and again. Familiars, you can now re-roll with 2 different shards. So much better. Makes grinding familiars less grindy and less horrible. Material synthesis saves you so much time. Quickcraft saves you so much time. Recommended unit saves you so much time if you're a newer player. In-match enemy index. Like, these changes were great. I think, like I said, 8 is a super great score for the mechanics of this update. It did add a lot to the game that made just playing it better. Next, we have the creativity. The new raid was very creative. Sid works very creatively. Katakuri is super creative. I love the way he works where he puts dough on the ground and slows people. Tournament rework was great. Love that. We already talked about this like 3 times already, so I'm going to give creativity of this update a 7. And then ending with that, we get to hype. For me, I'm not a big Eminence of Shadow fan. The anime was just kind of mid. The manga is very good, by the way. If you haven't read it, go read it. But I would say my overall hype for this update was about a 5. I was more interested in the changes that were coming with this update than the actual characters that were coming with this update. So that's how I feel about update 5.5. Alright, we are almost done. We almost have 2 updates left. We have the Heaven and Hell update, Guilty Gear update 6.0. This came out on June 3rd of 2025, and it also came out with 9 new characters. These characters included Kizzy, Soul Bad Guy, Bridget, Sin, Elfant, Baiken, Astolfo, Aladdin, and Judar. Elfant, Stolfo, and Baiken being our 3 secret units, and then Aladdin and Dark Mage being our battle pass. I'm just going to say it. I know this is going to upset some people because a lot of people did not like this update, but I am giving the characters for this update a 10. So that will be our second 10 of this video. If you disagree, please let me know down in the comments, but I just think they did such a great job with making each character of this Guilty Gear update do something special. I think they knew walking in that people weren't going to be too excited for a Guilty Gear update, so they just said screw it and made all these characters crazy and broken and cool, which I really appreciate them doing. Next, mechanics. So the big mechanic of this update was PvP being added, and with PvP being added, there were 3 different game modes: Assault, Defense, and Ranked. There was the new Legends and Story stages, along with the Act 4, which was very difficult, very special stage. We had a new Rift with Astolfo. We had leaderboards being permanently changed to not giving units anymore, but giving skins for characters. We had a new Battle Pass, match invites where you can invite people to the same server you're in. You now have Item Finder, where if you press an item, it'll take you to the stage. A bunch of elements got reworked to actually be good now. And yeah, that's about all of the mechanics that were released with this update. I think PvP is great. I think Act 4 was a little too hard, if I'm being honest, but I think it was fun if you could beat it. I think a new Rift is awesome. Love to see that. It was super easy though. Leaderboards actually have kind of good reason to play them now because you have good leaderboard rewards. Item Finder is useful, Match Invite is useful, and the element changes are huge because they make a lot of older characters better. I'm going to give the mechanics of this update, I think, a solid 7. PvP took a little bit for it to get kicked off. It was very broken at launch. Act 4 is very hard, so people don't like that. The Rift is fun, like we said, and the changes are also really nice. Now, when it comes to creativity for this update, I'm going to give creativity for this update an 8. The maps were beautiful for this update. The characters all did something really cool. PvP is a really interesting spin on the balloons TD battles type things. I'd say the things holding this back are the rifts being very easy and exactly the same, Act 4 being horrible and very hard, and that they've only changed some of the elements. I feel like they should have changed the rest of them because some of them also feel weak. And then finally, that brings us to hype level, which I'm just gonna flat out say it. I love Guilty Gear, but realistically, the hype level of the community for this update was probably around, I'd say, a 2 or 3. For me personally, it was like a 6 or 7, but I'm going to level myself, ground myself, and realistically see that the hype for this update was about a 2. And that means we're finally caught up to date to update 6.5 Late Bloom. This is our spring update on June 20th of 2025. We have 7 new units with a brand new world line. Alright, so let's look at our units. We have Kaguya, which is our brand new Vanguard unit. She's very broken, amazingly well designed. She's so cool. She does a lot of things. It's weird. It's kind of sad looking at Kaguya and then looking at Gogeta 4 because Kaguya does so much cool stuff and then Gogeta is just kind of there. Next we have Rudius from Jobless Reincarnation. We have Arcaloid, I think is her name, from Melty Blood. We have Merlin from 7 Deadly Sins. We have Hibana from Fire Force. And we have Rimuru from Reincarnated as a Slime. And then finally, we have Invincible and Conquest. Now, when it comes to the characters for this update, I'm just going to flat out say it. I think it's an 8. I think almost every character in this update does something really cool. I'd say the weakest links of this update are definitely Hibana and Merlin. They just do the least special things. Merlin's not bad. It's not me saying Hibana's bad as well. It's just they do the least creative things out of everyone in this update. Alright, now let's talk about the new mechanics that came in this update. We had the spring portals, the spring event, spring banner, spring shop. We had the selection banner where you can choose the mythic that you want. We have unit drop pities, which got added to every single stage. The lobby icons got all revamped. We have new familiars, and that's about it. I think mechanics-wise, we're just going to go pretty fast here. There's not a lot, but the few mechanics that they did add were pretty nice. I'm going to give mechanics-wise this update a 6. It's pretty fun. Now, let's jump over to creativity. Creativity for this update, I'm going to drop it and just say it's like an 8. Kaguya, insane, very well-made unit. Doing Conquest Invincible is really cool. Rimuru's passive is super unique. Arcaloid's passive is also super unique. Same for Rudius. All the new portal maps are super pretty looking. The selection banner is very smart. And I think that lands the creativity for this game, like I said, right around an 8. Next though, we jump into the hype factor for this update. So personally for me, I wasn't jumping out of my seat, hyped for this update, but a lot of people were pretty excited. I would say before the trailer came out, people were around a 4 to 5, and then after the trailer came out, people were around a 7 to 8. I personally would give this update in the hype factor a 7. I was going absolutely insane when this update came out. Invincible, Rimuru, Kaguya, Arcaloid, we just got cool characters, like the characters that you don't normally see in these types of games, and I think they really cooked. But that about wraps up every update in Anime Vanguards. So next we're going to jump over to ranking and rating all of them. Not ranking them out of a tier list, but we're just going to give you their percentages with all their scores combined. And then I'll give you the top 3 updates that I had from this list. Alright, congratulations everybody. Let's give you all a round of applause. I'm very happy you guys made it to the end of this video. This was a very long one. I did not intend this to be a super long video, but hey, here we are. I enjoyed making it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it as well. But we're finally here at the rankings. We're going to go from the lowest score to the highest score. There are 15 places here. And keep in mind that every score here is out of 10. So starting in last place, 15th place, we have Update 1.1, the Sukuna update. This landed itself at a 2.5 out of 10. Very low. I think it was a horrible update. I did not enjoy it. I doubt a lot of you guys enjoyed it either. The literal only thing this update had was Sukuna. Next we have is Update 1.75. In 14th place, this landed at a 3 out of 10. This is the Steel Ball Run update if you're unaware. And then next update we have Update 0.5, which was the Demon Slayer Tengen update. This landed itself at a 4 out of 10. Following that, we have the release of the game, aka Update 0. This landed itself at a 5 out of 10, just straight cut in the middle. Following that, we have Update 1.5. This landed itself at a 5.5 out of 10. Then after that, we have Update 4.5, which is the Vanguard Sujin Woo update. This update landed itself at a 6 out of 10. Then we actually have something really interesting here. We have a tie between 3 games for 1 score. Remember, I calculated all these numbers, so I didn't just pick these randomly and have 3 of them tie. These are just what the numbers came out to. So we have a tie between Update 1, Update 2.0, and Update 5.5, and all 3 of these games tied for a 6.5 out of 10. They all had the same score. By the way, if something's below 5, that doesn't mean it's bad. I would say 4 out of 10 is where it's enjoyable. I can get enjoyment out of it. Anything below a 4 though, it's bad. It's not good. Next up though, we have another tie. We have Update 3.0 and Update 3.5, which both tie out at a 7 out of 10. Following that, we have a final tie between Update 5.0, which was the Dragon Ball update, and then Update 6.5, which is the current update we're on right now, the Spring Portals. These both tied out at a 7.5 out of 10. Then in second place, our runner-up, we have Update 6.0, the Guilty Gear update. I'm sure this will get some people upset, because it wasn't a very hype anime, but somehow the calculations pulled this guy through to an 8 out of 10, which I agree. I think this update did basically everything right except the anime they picked. Mechanics-wise, gameplay-wise, PvP-wise, I think they did a really good job. And then finally, in first place, we have the highest rated update out of everything I ranked, and this is going to be Update 4.0. This is the Bleach update, and this lands itself a 9 out of 10. And there you have it. Those are the 3 best updates in my opinion, or technically 4, since I guess 2 of them tied right at 3rd spot. But this video was very fun to make, man. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for watching a 50-minute video. If you did make it all the way through, I really appreciate it. Make sure you go check out Perry. I mentioned him at the start of the video. He's a big inspiration of why I made this video. And thank you to everyone who helped me with this video as well. Shout out to my friend Amy. She did the amazing thumbnail art for this video. I love it. And she helped me determine a lot of these scores. So with that being said, thank you all for watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.